Well, I feel like you
Good
should
morning.
always open and close.
Oh,
Your
okay.
meetings and closings.
And I just said good morning, and it's afternoon, so we're getting used to that too. I'll tell you what, first thing I noticed this morning is we may have a lighter group today. There was a huge class here that Lance taught on new construction. So we we might be, we had a conflicting time slot, I guess you could say, today. But well attended. Travis, I know you were there, and it was well attended. So we may have a little lighter group this morning, guys, or this afternoon. So we got a lot to talk about, don't we, Mike?
Quite a bit.
Yeah. And hey, looking forward to all your input on this. Look, we thought it was very timely to talk about value proposition to buyers, right? Why do you think that is? why do we think we might want to talk about our value to the buyer, given the, I guess, the environment right now? What are we hearing out there about the buyer agent and their cost and their value?
Are you asking the question, what are we hearing about from our clients, or just in general? Just the scuttlebutt, internet forums, comment sections?
Yeah. What are we hearing from the media? What are we hearing out there about how the buyer agent value is perceived?
My own small anecdotal perception is that the description of the lawsuit and its impact, and actually what the lawsuit was about, does not get described accurately very often. As with most things, right? I mean, unless you're in it, you don't really know. So I think that there's a blanket perception that somehow this is to the people who actually pay attention. And I actually don't see these articles getting a lot of traction in the small group of online forums that I see these articles posted in. Yeah, there are some naysayers, but there's always some naysayers who love to jump on board with these things. But in general, I don't see a very accurate description of actually what's going on.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. Hey guys, do this. If you have a coaching manual, then let's go to 117. There's a place to make some notes there. If you have the forms manual, make sure you have the buyer broker agreement ready. So we just thought we would talk about this overall value proposition. Mike, we talked about a couple of ways to go about this. What if we opened it up to really just open mic right now, and we make, like, you guys tell me in order of priority, why don't just everybody weigh in? Let's get ready to write some notes down about what do we do that's valuable as a buyer's agent, and what do you talk about when you're talking to a buyer and you're trying to show what you're going to do and the value that you provide to a buyer.
By the way, real quick, if you don't have your coaching manual in front of you, but you're at a computer, the link is the flip book to the coaching manual. Yeah, I think this is a really good place to start because, you know, I asked a couple agents before I had this meeting, this similar question, and the answers were not as forthcoming as I think they might have been if I asked them, what is your value as a listing agent? And I don't think the value is less. In fact, I think the value might be more, but listing agents' values are more clearly defined in listing presentations, right? Because we actually have to go up there and have this discussion about why we're valuable. And we're doing this today because we are frequently not doing that with our buyers. And so we are doing it, we understand it, but we haven't articulated it as much. So it's not at the ready. It's not right there on the tip of our tongue, so we can kind of spit it.
And isn't that just an odd thing about our business? Why don't we have a listing appointment with buyers? I mean, why are we not? And how did we get? I mean, what are we really doing then with buyers? let me offer a kind of an observation, and then you guys tell me. This is my 33rd year in the business. Here's what I generally think of most agents outside the company more than anything. Okay. But we lead convert. So here's how I see it happening. You become aware of someone who's interested in purchasing a property. You may say, well, do you have something in mind? And if they do, you go show them. If they don't have something in mind, then you do a search, and then you let them know what you found, and then you hope to show them property. And then when you show them property, you keep showing that, let's look again, until they finally want to write an offer. And then right before we write an offer, we buyer broker them, because that's what the rules and laws say. And so we enter the buyer broker agreement, right? If you look at the dot loop signatures against the time in which they signed the offer and the time in which they signed the buyer broker agreement, okay, guess what? They're like seconds in most cases. Not every case, but we're lead converting. And so, and it's not bad. I mean, a consumer comes forward and says, this is what I want. And we immediately start to go to work for them and find them what they want. That is not bad at all. So the question is, though, why are we not having a presentation about the value? And this is what we're running up against, is that the world now, because of this lawsuit, is bringing attention to and challenging the value proposition of a buyer, and having the buyer be aware of and approve the rate in which they are paying through sales price to the agent. So we're not only being forced, but it's a real weird habit I think the industry got in. I remember 5 years ago, we had all over the board, we had agents saying, well, just come hire me. I'm free. My services to you are free. Now, that was just 5 years ago. We told all buyers that we were no cost to them because someone else was paying it for them and on their behalf. So now the rate is public knowledge. Okay, so the public sees what the rate is. And in some cases, it could be zero. So talk about a huge, massive change.
Hey, Will.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts, Nancy.
So I think that when you get called out for a listing presentation, you've got time to prepare, right? Someone's saying, Nance, I want you to come list my property. You've got time to do all of this. I think the reality of most agents when they're getting their buyers these days,
yeah,
I would say agents that are in the business, I don't know, 5 years or less, maybe not getting a lot of referrals, they're sitting floor. And so you're counting on that walk-in, and holy cow, a buyer has just come in, yippee skippy. Now what are we doing? I don't know that you have necessarily time, or if you get a couple buyers that come in to some of your galleries, right? How are you dealing with it then, and getting that relationship and really being able to sit down? I mean, when I go on a listing presentation, sometimes I'm there for well over an hour. I don't know that you have time again, where are the majority of these buyers coming from the company? Are they referrals? Are they coming from the galleries? And how are we dealing with it in that way?
Right. So it's an excellent point. And again, I think we should hang on to the customer says what they're looking for, and we answer that. So this is not it's not an or, it's an and. We listen to the consumer on what they want, and we educate them on our value proposition, not one or the other. It takes time to build these relationships. And to Nancy's point, we just don't get a lot of heads up. Someone walks in and says, I'd like to go see something. And I think we're right to go show them and then build the relationship. Kevin, Murray, did you have a comment you wanted to add?
Well, I think we do the same thing with our referrals also. We're starting out with them usually on a phone call, and we're going right out there and immediately looking at the MLS and automatically forwarding them things, rather than sitting down and talking about what our services are, and what we do for them as buyers agents. They've been referred to us. So with that in mind, we feel a confidence level to go out there and find them what they're after immediately.
Yeah. And I think we should.
I have a thought, Will.
Yeah, go ahead, Sandy.
And this is just my perspective and a thought that popped into my mind, but it couldn't be the involvement of generations and how it's perceived on any time I feel like a lot of these people these days, they're more in tune with instant results, instant gratification. And if you're not available right then and there, they're going to find somebody that is willing to not make this such a big process and overwhelm them and just go show them a house, because what they care about is a house. And I understand the value of showing them that there's a reason why there's a huge value to our service and the fact that this is our profession. But I think it's finding that balance of getting to figure out your client and their needs and when to introduce those things in the process.
Yeah, it's a good point, Sandy. It reminds me of when I walk on a car lot and then the salesperson is descend upon you. I don't know about you guys, but I instantly go, oh man, you know what I don't need right now is a salesperson. You know, what I want to know right now is if they have the car I'm looking for. You know, and it's just, so again, I think we should keep focus on what the client is asking at that time. And let me explain how things work and how we can do the best job of finding you and getting you what you want. Look, I think today's advice is really at 5,000 to 10,000 feet, but we may be looking at something a lot more specific in 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. So what we need to do is get in the habit right now as agents and educating people on the value of the buyer's agent while we're helping them find the home that they want. Any other thoughts on this? Let's hear some more.
I'd like to throw in the more selfish perspective, because I think we need it a little bit. And I agree with everybody. Buyers, I think there is a culture of buyers. I think it's been around for a long time. Buyers expect to see real estate immediately. But we all know that people who haven't been qualified to buy real estate are not serious real estate buyers. And so there's a bit of a conflict there, and we have to establish a relationship quickly, right? I mean, especially in a town like Park City, you know, I mean, we run the risk of throwing luxury real estate to people who potentially might not be qualified, right? They're nowhere near qualified. I mean, that's a tricky thing to do. And I think experienced agent can navigate that really well. Newer agents may struggle with it. But remember, there is a selfishness that you need to have here that, yes, it's a buyer. It's a wonderful opportunity for me to earn money. But the flip side of this is it's also a wonderful opportunity for you to waste a massive amount of time on unqualified people. And you need to protect yourself in that regard and not let people take advantage of you. So there is a give and take where I have to establish a relationship with an unknown person quickly, and I have to fulfill some demands. But there's, you know, if you're going to work for them, you should have some expectations from them. And so I think some of the things we should probably discuss in depth is how we make those decisions. Couple comments in the chat. Scott says, Curtis listed 177 tasks for buyer's agents yesterday. We should probably check that out.
I've got it right here, actually. I'll give you guys a glance of it. Here, let me move it over and you can take a quick glance at this, but it's on Facebook. Curtis Bullock, for those who are in the Wasatch Back, is the attorney CEO of the Salt Lake Board of Realtors. Here is the list I copied. It is actually, are you guys seeing that okay? You seen? Okay, good. It's buyers and sellers, but there's so much in here. You know, because there's been a lot of speculation about, you know, agents only filling out paperwork. This is the counter argument to, are you kidding me? There's a lot more to it than that.
Can we get a copy of that, Will?
Yeah, I've got it in, you betcha. So a lot of things, I think you'll look through this and go, yeah, you're right. You know, look at all these other things that we're doing here. There's 177. So it's pretty impressive. I'll send that out.
Chris Visser says, I have taught that you close for a buyer's consult as your first close on a buyer's side sell. If it's an online need, I'll meet them at the property, but then I work to get them into the office with the sit down conversation. Value proposition explained. Rachel says Amazon.com mentality of the current consumer, instant gratification. I think that's very true. And everyone would love a copy of that. Will?
Okay. Let me see if I can just put it in the chat a little bit later before we go, and you guys can click on it and have it. I've just got it in a Word doc. So yeah, no problem. Yeah, I think, look, again, this is what I'm saying. It's not an or, okay? You don't show houses or you have a buyer consultation. Okay. You look at what Rachel's saying, the instant gratification, you know, and when you walk on a car lot, what are you thinking when you walk on? Do they have the car I'm looking for? Okay. So you first start there. I get that. And anything in the way is just frustrating. You know, like the last thing a buyer wants to do is go have a meeting with you. You know, I've got to have a meeting with you. You know, they're just interested in a couple of houses. They want to have a meeting. They want a house, not a meet.
But the last thing they also want, they want the car. But then when you sit, you know, now the car salesman says, and by the way, Will, for you to buy this car, you're going to write me a check for X.
Yeah.
And that would go over like a big balloon.
Right. You're like, oh, wait a minute. 4.8 million? Oh, yeah.
One
time, Tammy and I have this funny memory of walking on to the Lexus dealer, and, you know, we're pretty conservative folks, and, you know, cars are depreciating assets. So, and I have a big problem with cars. So I went through the 12-step program. In my life, I've ordered a few 750 BMWs. So you know, think about what that did to my savings account through the years. Not so good, right? So, you know, Dr. Weinberg says, you cannot go down to the BMW store, Will. Just don't go. I'm like, oh, is that easy? He goes, yeah, don't go to just look. Anyway, we walk on the Lexus dealer, and the salesman comes up, and I'm like, hey, you know, do you got anything around like 45,000, 55,000? And he looks at Tammy and I, goes, you know what? Follow me. Let me show you what you guys can buy. And he walks us around the back, and there's these 3 little cars, you know, I mean, tiny cars. This happened to have a Lexus logo on them. And we looked at each other and just started laughing like, oh yeah, let me show you what you guys can buy. And it was just hilarious. It stuck with us forever. And so, yeah, look, these are, again, it's an and, right? It's not an or. It's yes, I want to show you property, and I need to educate you on the process. So it can be not frustrating or lower the frustration. And there's a lot of key people in this. And you know, one of them is Travis. And let me tell you about Travis. He can help you. He can light our path. He can lower frustration and make the home buying and financing process very, very easy. And you know, I mean, it's pieces, right? So a little bit at a time. So, good point.
Just for our education, while we're chatting, if you would please, would people put in the chat if they are doing any type of buyer presentation, or they consider what their current process is of buyer presentation, while we're kind of skimming through here? Yes or a no, either way would be great, just so we can get a.
Hey, while they're doing that, can I just make 2 comments?
Sure.
So Will, you asked us to go to page 117, right, and find out what our buyer's agent proposition is. And from a lender's perspective, the very first thing that popped to mind was what Fondario said, right? Don't put somebody in your car unless you know they can qualify. But there's so much more to that. And you know, the instant gratification of a client coming in to either sit floor, as Nancy mentioned, right? You got to act now. But I would caution that. There are so many times where we have a conversation. Did the buyer get approved? Did they not? What can they afford? So on and so forth. And you've already shown them, you know, 7 or 8 houses, and they can afford a $250,000 house, and they have Nancy, you know, running them through the colony, as an example. The second thing that came to mind is the way you kicked it off. And Mike, you did say this as well, as the online forums. So Mark and I had a great conversation this morning talking about the online forums. If you want to find your value proposition and get fired up quick, go read some of those online forums where they're saying, hey, you filled out an application, or you filled out a Utah form and you got paid X to do that as a buyer's agent. Man, I was offended, and I'm not a buyer's agent. I'm not a real estate agent, right? So anyway, those are the 2 things that came to mind as you guys were putting the comments in the section. I think your value proposition man, I can list several of them for you. But anyway, those are my thoughts from a lender side.
Yeah, love it.
Hey, Will, I'll just throw something in here too.
Please, Kevin.
The difference in the experience of going to the used car lot and dealing with the salesperson there can be completely different as well. I actually compare it to talking to a used cars person, usually comes up and tries to sell you something before they know what your needs are.
Right.
And you feel like I need to go shower. Okay. Because they jump into sales mode before they know your needs, as opposed to going to the doctor, and the doctor does what? They don't try selling you stuff. They ask questions and try to learn about what your needs are. And then only after they know what your needs are, what your symptoms are, do they propose a solution to that. And we should act more like doctors and professionals, because professionals ask questions, attorneys ask questions to try to find out what the need is. Oftentimes we are too soon say, I need to do a buyer consultation. You're sitting there and you are basically telling them what you do instead of asking questions and learning about them, because you may not want to work with them, even if they are qualified.
Yeah, it's very
Your
well
expectations are way out of line with reality. If they're just not a nice person, you don't have to work with them. And we need to kind of be a little more selective a lot of times.
Yeah, one of my mentors said, Kevin, that the smartest people are the ones that are asking questions. Because they're not afraid of the answer. They're in search of the answer. And it's very well said. And hey, look, the only thing that is the same as the car lot is the consumer perceives that there's something they want and they're looking at what they want only. That's the only similarity we have in that business. That's it. It's after that, it's completely different. And it's way more complicated. Remember, the salesperson at a car lot is interested in selling what they have on the lot. Right. Only. They're not interested even in solving the problem of the car buyer. Right? If they don't have the product, they're not going to say, hey, you know what? Have you ever taken a look at, the Lexus or the Acura? Okay. Or have you looked at the Porsche and the Mercedes yet? Like, they're not going to say that. If they're not selling Porsche, they're not telling you anything else. Right. So right. It's the only similarity we have is that laser focus of the consumer that says, I want the Amazon instant fix on what I'm looking at. And then we need to help and guide them better. So very well said, Kev. Excellent advice.
Let's jump to the chat real quick. Tyler Richardson says 12-step program and you still bought a new Corvette.
Okay, well, wait, hold on a second. Now, I actually did not technically buy the car. Okay, my wife bought it as an anniversary. Okay, and I would have been a horrible husband not to accept this great gift. And so, that was not about a car. That was about being a good husband.
Good real estate agents can spot talk like this from a mile away.
Wow, it got deep in here.
A lot of the responses are saying that they are doing buyer consultations. Cindy says, hi, y'all. I absolutely do a buyer consult every time. The work we do preparing listing presentations should not be any different. She also has a lender join in. Kevin says, even with referrals, we like to meet them, at our office to go exactly what they are going, along with budget and financing options. Phil agrees with Kevin, and Cindy says, I go over all the contracts process and leave them with copies of all the contracts we will use, give them 3 referrals, inspectors, lenders, and title companies, 3 of each. So very good. Craig, what say you? You've been a little bit...
Well, it's important in the consultation process, besides explaining what we're going to do, to listen to what they need. People want to be heard. And I've found that when buyers are interviewed and asked what their needs are, what they're looking for, how important is that fireplace, how important is that garage, and really understanding what they're looking for, they really feel like they have an agent that's working for them. And the positive reviews afterwards are very impressive. So listening to what they're looking for and presenting what you're going to do for them can be all in one meeting. And I think it improves our service.
Craig, based on the answers that you get from those buyers, a lot of times you realize they don't know. And they don't know how to answer your questions. Sometimes they'll tell you what they think they want you to or want you to hear. And based on those answers, a lot of times you realize they're very early on in the process, and
That's right.
They don't know what neighborhood, they don't know what price range, they haven't been to a lender, they just don't have enough exposure to the market to know exactly. Other times you walk in, you realize they've already been through a lot of the decision process, and now they're there near the buying stage, and you can be a little bit more aggressive with those people, knowing that they have already eliminated certain neighborhoods, eliminated certain types of homes. They've been to a lender and they already have a pre-qualification, or they know exactly what their budget is. That makes your job easier, but when you start getting wishy-washy answers from them, it's a clear signal to you to back off and start getting some more information before you proceed.
Absolutely, that's right. And when I've found that you can ask them, well, describe for me the perfect house, and then take notes and listen to what they say. And if it's a couple, if there's two of them, ask each one individually. And something really important happens when you interview.
Greg, do you like to recommend that you buy separate houses and get an attorney?
Yeah, right. People will say, well, I didn't know that was important to you. And it's kind of an epiphany. They realize, okay, now we've got to compromise a little bit and decide what we both are looking for.
Yeah.
And at the end of all that, they think you're a genius because you brought that out and helped them to understand what they really are looking for.
And sometimes you discover who the decision maker in the family is too.
Yeah.
Hey, let me twist it a little bit. It reminded me of something I think is very, very important. So let me start out just a general question. What do you think buyers are actually buying? The buyers of residential real estate, what are they buying? Put it in the chat. What do you think they're buying?
Jessica says home experience, memories, investment, their dream, lifestyle, love. Look at Phil coming in with love. Sandy says feelings and dreams, a home, a place to build their life, security and love. Craig and Phil coming in with the deepness there.
There's something that I've been saying for a while, but I'll say it again, a broken record, but it isn't the walls. It's not, they're not buying the square footage, and they're not buying the feature. They're buying the effect of what the feature is. They're buying the benefit of the size. They're buying the lifestyle of the location. And there is an image in their mind about what they hope for. So let's watch these words. They have a hope of what it will happen there. They hope that all the family will be excited to converge on Park City for the ski season. And inside of that vision, there's very specific hopes that, well, where are they going to stay, and how will they fit, and can we feed everyone, and is it peaceful? Can I relax? This is about something way bigger than the walls. So I think I'd build on what Craig was saying and go, look, when you're asking the questions of what they want, behind what the feature is the reason they want that. And I know some conversations aren't going to go that deep, but as long as we are aware of what that's there, then you can help them accomplish that. So someone said to me, well, yeah, but Will, what's the lifestyle of a entry-level condo at, $380,000 in, West Haven? And I was like, seriously? Where are they living now? There's a lifestyle. And they have a hope for that. So at every price point, there's a hope and a vision, and it is not the walls. They're not buying the walls. So Remember that. And the best example I've ever seen of this is the Mountain Cabin Verbo commercial. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's 1 minute long. Just type in Verbo Mountain Cabin and you'll see an empty cabin that has no one there. And it doesn't become precious and memory filled until everyone shows up. And this is why Tyler owns a houseboat, right, Tyler? I mean, because it really isn't the boat. Honestly, it's not the boat, because the boat's a pain in the butt and very expensive. But it affords something to happen on the boat, on the lake, in that time of year that is very hard to duplicate. And those memories become very, very precious over a lifetime. And I think, home is important to everyone. And just having a conversation with Steve Sr. yesterday, and he reiterated, just think about the cause we have. Like, what is our cause? We have a very worthy cause to help people realize their dreams and find home. And, I've kind of tried to come up with an acronym, the words in home. And so for me, it was happiness, love, family, and safety, using the HOME in those words: happiness, love, family, and safety. And a lot of you are kind of saying that. I mean, this is what they are after. So I think it's important to make a connection like that they understand. This is the human side of it. This is not the commission and the money and the numbers and the complexity and the data and the, oh my gosh, right? It's not that. It's the real reason that we're after this vision and dream. And that's where you make such a good friend for life out of these conversations, because they connect with you and they realize, you know what, I like that about you, they'll say, and thank you for realizing that. That's why this is so important. So, yeah.
Okay. Sandy says, this reminds me of Will's experience when he bought during COVID. Am I right? I think you are.
Absolutely.
Chris says, heck yeah. First step out of where you came from. I feel that. Travis says, making a house a home is what's important. Jessica says, well, it is the money. And Steve says, in my opinion, people know within seconds of walking into a home whether or not it's a good fit for them and their family. All right, very good.
In my recent case, it just took Tammy walking through the shallow end of the pool. And that was it. Like, I knew we bought a house. We had no idea about the house, but we did like the pool. So, yeah. No, I look, this is why it's very, very difficult to use technology to replicate what a real estate agent does, a good one, because it's just every situation is different. Every person is different, property different, market is different. Everything is so different. They need a guide to get through this. So, so excellent.
I want to switch gears just slightly a little bit, roughly the same subject, but I would like to talk about and get people's feedback on setting expectations with buyers. I feel like because buyers can chew up so much of our time, I do feel like there's a lot of agents who could shore up their expectation setting when it comes to buyers. For instance, since most of us are doing a buyer presentation, what are we telling them in regards to how we'll communicate, how often we'll communicate? Can they expect to hear from us at 10:30 at night, for instance, or can they expect to text us, but we won't get back to them till 8:30 the next day, that type of thing. And also, like, there are buyers out there who, and Paige Siglin just had one of them. Paige approached the number of showings. I think it was over 70. I can't remember that exact number, but he showed a massive number of homes to people. And I'm not saying we should ever set an expectation that we, only show X number of homes, but I would say that after a certain point, maybe it's time to revisit what people are actually looking for. Ooh, Paige said over 100.
Wow.
Ooh. Chills, man. Look at that gas bill on that. That's time to refer them out. Yeah, I think in some of these instances, I think some of the expectations I think that I've seen agents set so people know it's possible. I've definitely seen multiple times agents say, I don't work on this day, so don't expect any response from me. And they have never had pushback, by the way. So if you are considering something like that, like, hey, I need a break, I need a real day where no one's contacting me, I have seen multiple agents set that expectation and live by it and not have any problems with it. Other expectations, I don't answer phone calls after this hour. That seems like something I think all of us should set, especially because what really gets done at 8:30 at night. I mean, we can get some things done, but our deadlines have probably expired if that's what we're dealing with. If it can be done at 8:30 at night, it can be done at 8:30 in the morning as well. And probably there's no significant difference in that. That type of thing. These are all things that as you work with buyers and you're feeling a little stress and anxiety, these expectations, if you set them, you can refer back to them. So think about that during your presentations. Set some boundaries, right? The other boundary I think I would recommend setting, because I think this also is a lot of the hang up that I see. Yes, we are telling them that they should have high expectations of us, but I think it's appropriate for you to say, hey, listen, I do have some expectations of you if we're going to work together. And one of those expectations is that you communicate with the lender quickly. When the lender needs something and reaches out, we respond quickly. So, stuff like that. It's okay to ask for things from your clients. If they, if the response is no, that's okay. You can respond to me that way, but just stay in communication, those types of things. Paige said, I saw the Verbo commercial. I learned a lot from that buyer about boundaries. Mike gave me some great, thanks. I will read the rest. Thanks, Paige. Anyway, that's my little soapbox there.
Hey, Mike, we might want to because we're going to run out of time. We might want to transition over to that, the buyer broker form. Do you have that?
I have it ready. Are we sharing and reading?
Yeah. I think also, and I see Mark is on the phone right now, guys, but I'm not sure if he'll unmute or not. But there is going to be an email that's going to go out about the importance of really staying in our lane about educating buyers on the buyer broker agreement. One of the big takeaways from the lawsuit is that many states, okay, including Missouri, in which the state it was launched in, does not require these buyer broker agreements like we do. In the state of Utah, if you want to represent, so get paid and represent a buyer or seller, it must be done in writing. So it's must be expressly defined. And then it goes into say and define the scope of agency, meaning what is your job? Like, what are you going to do? And what are your duties? And also the responsibilities, as Mike just brought up, was the responsibilities of the buyer themselves. So if there's going to be an arrangement that we have this in writing, that's the state of Utah. So we're only a handful of states that are on this level. So we'll consider ourselves lucky that we've got a great defense, I guess you could say, for the value proposition of a buyer's agent to a buyer. The email will basically reiterate the importance of having the buyer broker agreement prior to the rule is specifically prior to REPC. But I think what we're trying to say here is that the prior to REPC seems off to me. Like that's the worst case scenario. If it's done after REPC, then you're subject to a fine. So I don't think our standard should be, right on the cusp of in one moment, I'm okay. And in 2 minutes later, I would be fined. I think there's a higher ground there. So you'll see that email go out to everyone in the company. This is a company-wide email. You'll see that come from Mark, and it's a reminder of the importance of educating buyers and when we go to represent them. So you might say, well, when is this going to happen? What is the best time? And look, I've taught this. So I've taught this for years. So you understand what implied agency is, right? And we don't have it in Utah. Okay. So you can't act as someone's agent and then therefore create agency. But if you are acting as if someone's agent without agency, that's a violation. So I guess I would say the buyers that you're currently working with, would they say that you are their agent? And if they would say yes to that, then you need a buyer broker agreement. Right? If they would say, well, yeah, we've seen multiple houses. They got me in touch with the lender. We've had multiple conversations. I do consider them my agent, and that's great from a relationship standpoint. But from a legal standpoint, we're really flirting with a dangerous area. Now, technically, you know, if we had to defend this, then we'd say we were in the boundaries of the law, because the law standard is so low. The law standard is just previous to REPC, which is why, unfortunately, all the documents get sent to the buyer in .loop or DocuSign, and they sign the buyer and always say, well, sign this first. And they sign that first, and then like 2 minutes later, they're starting to sign all the offer paperwork, and that's a very low standard. So I think we can improve on that, and that's what the email will say. So hey, Mike, let's pull it up, and we'll use. Look, I'm just going to pull out a couple of things I think we could go over. And I'm interested in any kind of feedback on this, but
do you want me to just start reading and we'll make comments? How would you like to proceed, Will?
Oh, let's see. Let me get my screen right. I've still got that.
Y'all are seeing the buyer broker agreement, right?
And I've got that other document over the top of it. I just have to hold on one sec. Fic to window. There we go. Okay. And look, the Wasatch front and Wasatch back is just about the same. There's just a few sentences that are a little bit different. So I guess we could use either one, frankly. But for now, just know that we are talking about an internal form, not just the UAR form. And some of you may say, well, what's the difference in the UAR form and the internal form? Well, the internal form has broader disclosure and more clarity in term. And I think it's frankly a better way to show your value. All right, so the more you can march through this form is better for you. A lot of your value is protecting them against dangers in a transaction. And the internal form does a better job of showing the pitfalls and complexities. All right, Mike, I think we pretty much all get one. Oh, God, really? I mean, I could complicate, you know what? I can almost hear Nancy Ernie in my head right now going, Will, you're overcomplicating it. And I'm like, yeah, but there's so many problems. You know? Have any of you been challenged by a buyer to say, hey, one property or only for a weekend or only for a week? Has anyone been challenged on something like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that would definitely be paragraph 1. Right. So in a real big sense here, this is a business decision that you're making on whether the efforts that you're going to make is going to be limited to a very, truncated time frame or geographical location. But that is where we'd put it. I have seen some of these challenged by the division where, someone puts in like all the counties of Utah when they're only licensed in, say, 2 counties. And then they want to hold someone responsible for an area they're not even, a member of an MLS in, and they can't really fulfill their reasonable care duty under fiduciary duty. So I've seen the state challenge that. Where a buyer is demanding, a buyer agent demanding fees, broker demanding fees in areas they don't practice. So there's like, yeah, I was going to skip over section 1, but that's probably a good reminder. This is a business decision that's made here in section 1. All right, section 3. Because this is Wasatch Front, there is a couple things that are a little bit different. And I'm just seeing one right now, but we'll save that. I guess I'll save more of that conversation for later. The purpose of this, huddle today is to help us be better at presenting to buyers. And when do we talk about the buyer broker agreement and what does it mean? So notice right away, section 2.1, broker fee in the initial term or an extension of the term by an addendum. The buyer, the person acting on buyer's behalf, purchases real property. referenced in section 1 above, which would be our geographical areas. The buyer agrees to pay the company the broker fee of what amount? So is it a fill in the blank? No. Is it pre-printed? Yes. Is pre-printed at what rate? 3%. So it does set an expectation, I think, from the company to back you up that your side of compensation will be 3% of the sales price. You can see at this point of the game right now, we better have already communicated the value, right? Because I'm showing you the price tag of the services of a buyer's agent, and that would be an objection if they don't understand what they get for the 3%, So I'd much rather have that conversation about what we do first before I talk about that, right? Remember, the perception in many people's minds about what we do is you just show a house and write up some paperwork and then you get paid, 50 grand. Okay, so what are you going to do to change that narrative and improve that narrative? Again, it's pointing right back to buyer consultation. There's complexities to this, and let's talk through all of them. Absent of that meeting, if we jump right into this, is very tough. And the reason why this is paused until prior to REPC is because we're crossing our fingers hoping that the BAC on the listing is 3%, and then we don't have to talk about it. And it's okay. Here's how one thought at a time, Will. One thought at a time. Okay, sorry. One thing at a time. If you went to go, okay, so we lead convert, right? We show, and hey, they found one, and we go to write. Well, we look it up, and it says 1.5 BAC. Now what? So I know you're all going, well, we're going to ask for it. Okay. Yeah, we're going to add an addendum to it. We're going to ask the seller to make up the difference, and there's a form for that, right? And you're going to feel uncomfortable, aren't you? Unless you've already had the buyer consultation meeting and you explained your fees and everything else and the value proposition. Now it's so much easier to have that. Because this is such a big issue and it's so material, like how do we get compensated and how are you paid? All of this. I'm going to stop talking for a sec. What's your thoughts? And what do you think about this and the timing of this? And how are you getting through paragraph 2 when it comes to how you're paid? Well, don't everyone talk it. We're like, what? We'd rather not say anything, Will.
Well, I like to think that it's the transaction that pays for this, right? When we're talking about some of the big dollars that we are up here, it's not necessarily, who's, you talk about all these lawsuits and the sellers are, thinking, et cetera. Now the buyers have presented a lawsuit, et cetera. At the end of the day, it's the transaction that is paying for these fees, right? And I think if we discuss more of that in those terms, and I don't have a problem going back to the seller asking if, it's not meeting X%. But when you talk about some of these numbers that we're getting, and they're huge dollar volumes when we're dealing up here. Like to ask a buyer, it's like, buyer, just by the way, if this doesn't work out, you're going to owe me a check for, whatever, $150,000. And you just know they're going to choke on that. But if somehow you can say, hey, it's all presented in the negotiations of the transaction itself, the transaction is covering all of these fees. Yep. I think it's just an easier pill to swallow for everybody.
Yep. It's very well said. And that is part of the process. That's having some clarity on how we negotiate for these different things on their behalf, how we can put these things in sales price. They could be financed in a lot of this. So, it's very well said, Nancy. Any other thoughts?
Hey, Will.
Yes. Hi, Sandy.
So we had an interesting thing just happen this last weekend with the same kind of document down here where the selling agent or the buyer's agent who was represented in our office, she had found a property for the buyers that was a 2.5% commission. And she did everything right. She filled out the form and let them know that they had that 2.5% paid for by the seller, but that 0.5% they would need to cover at closing, and they agreed to it and signed it. Well, getting down to closing, they find out with the interest rate adjustments and things that came up that they weren't able to get the house unless that money that they were going to pay the agent directly would need to be removed. So that was an interesting thing to see how, that was the first thing that they thought could get cut.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they agreed to it, it was either cut it back out
Mm-hmm.
or we can't buy.
Yep.
So, and that's where I see with this lawsuit that we're going to have a lot of problems with the young buyers that don't have those funds to pay for those commissions. That's our argument that we're needed.
Yep. It's very well said. I don't think anyone really is predicting less downward pressure on BAC. Okay. No one is predicting that. Okay. Everyone's predicting that the future is more challenging on substantiating a 3% BAC. I mean, hence the topic today. And we'll have many of these topics as we continue to sharpen our saw on how we deliver our value proposition. I did hear a very, very interesting perspective today, and I hope this does not sound self-serving. I know you guys know I'm all in at Berkshire Hathaway. Okay. It's my last job of my life. This is it. I'm here forever. I'm here until I can't work anymore. I hope that's 20 something years. So I hope it doesn't sound too self-serving here, but I think that there's a real good chance that a buyer's agent who has nothing else to offer other than what they personally do. Okay. I'm talking just what they do as an agent will not be able to substantiate a 3% BAC. Because they are duplicatable across all other agents, and the ability for the consumer to see the difference, they won't see it. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if an agent like that wakes up and says, I need to have more value, I mean, perhaps state law will require more definition of scope. That's what all it says right now is define scope of agency. That's it. What that means is, what does the consumer receive and what do they have to pay for? It's very possible that that gets added to, like the scope of agency defined, such as the following services. Well, if these independent agents don't have those resources, they're not going to be able to charge a 3% rate. I thought that was really, really wise. Like, that's a very, very high possibility that that's the case.
And so what resources are you talking about?
When you think about, really think of Utah properties and then think about Berkshire resources. So when you think about the environment in which you're in and the people around you to help you, Nancy, like any call you could make to anybody, you got a problem with water rights, boom. 3 people come to mind in the company of experts in this area. You got legal issues, you got broker, attorney, brokers, and attorney. You got countless other experienced agents around you who've probably experienced it. What about land development on top of that? And the procedures and, all the details and complexities of projects, or just relocation services, financial services, title work. What are we providing in this whole deliverable? If we walk into a world where they force us to get more specific, that's to our benefit, because our deliverables are way higher and more valuable than the average agent who's getting the same 3%, who exists in another environment, who cannot define the scope of agency like we can.
It was interesting in these lawsuits too. One of the plaintiffs said that the reason that they were against paying buyer's agents is they were saying that paying the same 3% to an agent who got their license last week as they were to an agent that had 30 years of experience, had all this knowledge, had all this support and everything. And they felt like they needed to be able to negotiate based on the qualifications of that buyer's agent that was bringing them the offer. Yeah. And they may start unbundling and trying to, identify what each agent is worth. I'd hate to see that, but attorneys do it all the time. They name their hourly rate. But I hope we don't have to go down that route. And, each one of us has to determine based on how many designations we have or years of experience or the resources we have at our disposal, how much we're going to get paid. But that's where these lawsuits would like it to go.
Yep.
I wish if there was going to be a change legislatively, it'd be with the state and have the threshold be a little tougher to get into this industry.
Yeah.
I agree.
Right?
And that's coming from someone who spent a lot of years in real estate education only.
Yeah.
And I think I was always a proponent for that, Nancy. It's just bottom line, it's too easy. Now the public doesn't understand this, but remember, half of the licensees right now in your marketplace right now do 0 transactions. Zip. 20% of them will do 3 or less. That means now we're up to 70% of the licensees in your marketplace don't do any business to speak of.
Right. And the scary thing with that, though, is if they're in contact with the public, right, they're probably coming across as not that well refined. And
yeah, I mean, these are some of the problems. This is a problem with our world we created. We pay every agent exactly the same, whether they're the biggest discount broker in the world, providing absolutely nothing at all with no resources whatsoever, and compared to someone who's the top agent at Berkshire Hathaway. We pay them exactly the same.
I have a question. Don't you think that education and referrals set us apart? I mean, in our business, 85% of our business is referral business. Those people, it's not hard to talk them into, everybody wants to get a break on their commissions. Well, we've been dealing with that since the Ice Age.
Yep.
But education, and you and Mark and I had this conversation. Why on earth do we only have to have 18 hours every 2 years? Which, by the way, is torturous for me to do. But if we all had to do 50 hours a year or 35 hours a year, and raised our dues, by the way, you'd carve out, 35% of these newer agents that don't invest in the business. They don't invest in the education. So why can't we raise the bar? Why can't we demand that we have more education and set ourselves apart? If you really want to set ourselves apart, that's where to start. And again, what's everybody doing with their referral business? We cherish our referrals. So those people are not hard to talk into commissions.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. A hairdresser has to have something like 120 hours of CE every year, and we have 18. And look at what we deal with.
Well, yeah. Okay. So Kevin Murray, you're making my point. You see that next item there for everyone, more transparency. In the state of Utah, we require the scope of agency. That's it. If it has to go more than that, like your experience, how many transactions you sold, I'm just trying to paint a picture of a concept. Not that I predict it would go like that. But if there is more requirement on the agent to say what they're doing, then we're on the right side of this. We're in the right environment because we provide more than anyone else. We're in the right space.
So I guess, I would say if the state won't do it, it'd be nice if Berkshire did it, right? If you require agents to do, right, here it is, guys, there's just more education. If you want to be with Berkshire, it used to be a really big, right? It used to be tough to get into this company. And I don't know that that's still the case. I mean, I don't know. And I'm not in the, I don't know what it is these days. I know it's a tough, tricky subject, but it'd be nice to be kind of the cream of the crop, right? The best of the best are here. And if you're going to be
exactly
here,
right. And that's how we used to be. So, and Nancy and I would go way, way, way back on this. But if you look at this individual chart of producers, it starts up here and then it goes like this and it tails off. And there's all these people down here.
Right.
Well, these classes, education, if you've been in the business long enough and you've done enough transactions, then by God, everybody needs to go out and get their associate broker license. Yeah. They just do. That should be a requirement of Berkshire. And I know that you can't require these independent contractors to do anything, but that would make us all a cut above if we had more education, more associate brokers, and then it's easier to demand more money because you are the cream of the crop.
Yeah, that's an interesting spin to say like at a certain time frame, at like year 5, you have to get your broker's license or something like that. At year 3, you have to.
Kind of, and even the education, right? Just here it is, guys. If you want to be here, this is what we're doing.
Yep. Yeah. By the way, it is tough to get into Berkshire Hathaway, guys. And it's even harder telling people without being arrogant or rude or disrespectful to someone that has interviewed with us and that they just don't get a follow-up call, or, they do call and say, hey, are we going to meet again? And you're like, remember, just one note on that. A new agent out of school is welcome to Berkshire Hathaway under a couple of scenarios. One, they're recommended by someone already in the company. Two, they have been recruited to assist someone on some level of a team. Three, they've had extraordinary past history on owning businesses or experiences otherwise that we would consider to be someone who's experienced in business itself and maybe new to real estate. And we really try to hold those lines. I mean, I don't know how many times you guys I've told a new person, like, Berkshire's not a place for, we don't train, we don't have like a T-ball training program at Berkshire. You know, we have intermediate to advanced training every day. That's it. And, you know, it's probably not the best place for you to start off, you know, Lone Ranger, unless you are under one of those scenarios. And in that case, you know, look, we've had, like, lately, we've had a lot of new people that are the kids of our team leads. It's been kind of cool, you know, and we've been happy to represent that, you know, to be there and support them and represent them as their new experience in real estate. And that's been kind of cool. But for the most part, that's it is tough to get in here. And it's even tougher to tell them.
I'd add to that, people that have done direct sales that have experienced a lot of rejection and had success in the previous field.
Yeah.
This is a tough business. And if they've had success in those fields, we can transfer those skills. And the other is people who are caretakers. Believe it or not, studies have shown that people who have a background in school teachers, nurses, those type of people who care about others, oftentimes do a really good job on a real estate transaction, because they will put the needs of that client ahead of their own, and they'll actually be very, very good fiduciaries for a person. If you have somebody that, you know, it's all about me and I'm not interested at all in helping other people. In fact, I hate it when people bug me and call me. They're probably not going to make it in business, because we all know that we have to take those calls all the time, and we have to put the family deal on hold for a minute and take care of people. And if somebody doesn't have some background or some that in their personality, we turn them away.
Yeah, I love that interview. The interviewee says, you know, I just love real estate. You know, people not so much, but real estate I just love.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, you're not gonna make it long. But hey, guys, guess what? I think are we out of time, Mike?
We're out of time, but there's a couple things I think we need to address. We missed a lot of chat, but Jessica's chat I think we should discuss real quick. Jessica says, do we have literature that explains in plain language to buyers and sellers what services we provide that others do not, exactly what services set us apart? Yeah, so we are, I would say, this close to having a really well-defined buyer presentation put together by marketing. And I would also say that our listing presentation, though exists in template form and definitely needs agents to customize it to their own needs, is part of that. We could, and Jessica also says, we could even say that our brokerage has a different CE requirement. It's an interesting idea. I kind of like it. And Mark O'Brien won't comment. Do we have marketing materials that explain what you're saying, video or print literature?
Yeah, I could speak to that a little bit. Look, we knew this was coming. We've been talking about it for 2 years at least. We watched this lawsuit forever. We kind of had to have a feel of where this thing was going to go before we put together, say, like the company generic, you know, framing and skeleton or structure of a buyer presentation. So now that we know that, this is cookies in the oven right now, and there'll be more collateral to follow, because we're going to make this argument. We're going to be heard, and we're going to make it easy for you to show your value proposition with all the assets needed. So all that's coming, and it will just be trickling in as the weeks and months come. So just stay tuned, and it's on its way.
Yeah.
Mike, I just send you that 177. Can you figure out how to get that in the chat? I was technically
betcha. Real quick, also, Steve says, do you ever see the state increasing CE licensing? I would say that it's possible. I'll play devil's advocate here for a second. The state's interest is to give controlled access to every industry. And so to set a significantly high barrier is seen as, well, it's a restriction of some type, a restrictive access to industry. And so they're going to tend and lean towards no more often than not. So whether or not they do, I don't know, but they're going to lean towards easier access for more people to get licensed, because that's in more people's interest. But they also have to obviously weigh the interest of the public, and public needs to be protected as well.
Yeah, the only thing they have done is said, hey, they institute the mandatory course so they can make sure that certain topics are stressed every couple of years.
That's right.
That's helped. That's part of the CE, but I'd suggest the mandatory course not be part of the CE. It should have 18 hours plus the mandatory something to really kind of get the attention of the agents who really need to have that drilled into their heads on the basics.
Yep. I have a license in Idaho. Also, it's 20 hours there. And also when you go to renew, you have to renew it in 1 year. Your first cycle is 1 year. So really in the first 3 years of that license, you've got 40 hours of education in 3 years. So you see, we're low compared to our counterpart in Idaho.
Maybe they should do like a training wheels type of licenses, where just like a 16-year-old licensee with their car, you can't have friends in the car, and you can't go driving with buyers by yourself as a new agent, because you might get in a wreck. Something like that, I think, would be helpful.
Speaking of someone who's got teenage drivers right now, right, Mike?
Oh my gosh, you do not want teenage drivers.
Well, hey, we better wrap this up. I know everyone's busy. Thank you, first of all, everyone, for joining the huddle. This is a new time slot for us, but we're proud to be in a more convenient time frame that doesn't conflict with other agent priorities. And I really appreciate all the feedback through all of you who really love this company, who are trying to help us be better, and we're listening, and we're trying to get better. And we'll continue to listen and improve. So I appreciate, look, why this was a great discussion today? Because you showed up, you were present, you were involved in the discussion, and you offered your thoughts to your peers. That's what made it great today. And I really, on behalf of everyone, thank you for everyone who had something to offer and to share today.
Hey, Will.
Yes, Steve.
Hey, Will, can I just say something real quick before?
Please.
Hey, thank you for the change. It's great. Good content. And I think Mike and you, when we talk about the buyer broker agreement and this whole lawsuit, I think if we did something, in person role play, and it could just be even 3 or 4 minutes, because I think even now, occasionally we'll get approached from buyers or sellers going, hey, I hear this in the news. I'm reading it in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times. So I want to use your services, but what are you going to do? What about the fees? I think that it would be good to at least see some examples of what you guys feel would be good talking points, and not necessarily written, but I think maybe even a YouTube type video. But I think collectively, if we all saw it, then we're also on the same page. We're not saying different things. I think that would be healthy.
I agree with you. Let's do that next week then, if we can, or pull that off as soon as we can get that together. That's a great recommendation, Steve.
Okay. Thanks again.
Thank you guys. We're a
Thanks,
fantastic.
everybody. Great meeting. Thanks, guys.
It was great. Thank you so much. Go out there and help someone. We've got a great cause, and we've got plenty of resources to do it. So hope you have a successful rest of your day.